Dr. Hammond has joined us. And Tom C. Okay, so we do not have any presentations tonight. So the next item on the agenda is an open session for any topics in general. If you want to comment on the ordinance for cannabis, we will have a separate hearing on that. So this open session is just for any other topics that you may be here to speak about. Please keep your comments to 3 minutes. When you are unmuted, just give your name and address for the record. So if anyone, or you can try and raise your hand in the participant screen, or I think we're all on one screen, so we should see if somebody wants to speak. I don't see anybody's hands up. Oh, I do now. Melissa Provost. Okay, just unmute yourself.
Hi, thank you for recognizing me. As some of you know, I am also the president of the Somerset Hills Little League this year, and we are finally going to have a spring season, which we are very excited about. Our opening day will be Friday night for softball and Saturday for baseball. We are trying to spread it out across a bunch of times so that we are respecting social distancing, but still able to give the kids a nice day to kick off the season and to recognize them. So I'd like to invite Mayor Canos and the council members to join us in our festivities. They're going to be at Kiwanis. It'll be Friday night for softball, Saturday starting at 9 a.m. for baseball. The little kids go first and then they get older from there. So it'll be 9, 10, and 11 o'clock for the rest of them. Our world famous snack shack will be open for all of your snacking delights. And we hope that you will be able to come out and support us.
Wonderful. What time on Friday night, Melissa?
I am checking with that now. Greg, you're on? Our softball guys on.
Yeah, that starts at 6 to 7:30 on Friday night.
Hey, real quick, I'm sorry to interrupt. Anthony, you can check the waiting room. I think there's people are saying they're still in there.
There were 3. I had the timer up and I didn't see it, but I just
okay. Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. That's good.
Melissa, could you give us the date? Which Friday is that?
This Friday, starting at 6 for softball, and then Saturday, which is the 17th, we start at 9 a.m. for baseball. T-ball goes first, and then we move up to the older kids from there. So 9, 10, and 11, we have ceremonies for the older kids. Great. Playing baseball for the boys on Saturday.
And hopefully the weather will improve.
Fingers crossed. I mean, yeah. We're trying our best.
I know. Good. Well, glad to hear you're having a season that's long overdue.
Yeah, it'll be good to get the kids back out there and see them being kids again.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else wish to speak at this time? You see anybody? Anthony, you see anybody? I don't.
No.
Okay. Then I will close the public session. Next is the public hearing on ordinance 2021-1876, an ordinance prohibiting the operation of any class of cannabis business within the geographical boundaries of the Borough of Bernardsville, and supplementing and amending Chapter 3 of the Borough Code entitled Police Regulations and Article 12 of the Borough Land Use Regulations entitled Zoning. For any of you that have been or weren't at our last meeting when this was introduced, I had attended a briefing from the New Jersey League of Municipalities. So just as background, there are 6 different licenses for cannabis under the new law. The first one is a cultivator, which is a person who grows, sells to processors, to wholesalers, and to retailers, but not to consumers. And the cultivator, the municipality is allowed to put a 2% tax on. There's a manufacturer is the second license, which processes, packages, and sells to anyone but consumers. And again, they can be taxed 2%. That's the maximum tax you can put on. The third license is a wholesaler, which can obtain, store, sell, or transfer for resale. Again, not to consumers, and that is allowed a 1% tax. A distributor who would transport cannabis in bulk from one licensed establishment to another, they do not get taxed. And then there's the retailer who sells directly to the consumer from a retail store. They may use a delivery service for off-premise deliveries, and they can be taxed up to 2%. The last is a delivery for courier services that can deliver to a consumer from a retailer, and they're not taxed. Anyone that wants to apply for a license needs to have lived in New Jersey for at least 2 years and be 21 or older. They would undergo a criminal history check, a background check, and be fingerprinted. And they must meet the requirements of any rule or regulation that's adopted by the Cannabis Regulatory Commission. The tough part on this is the commission, which is a 5-member appointed by the governor, has until August 22nd to adopt their rules and regulations. They are meeting for the first time today. They will determine how many of each type of license can be issued, how the tax can be used, and when sales can begin. So municipalities have 180 days from the enactment of the law, which also brings us to August 22nd, the same as when the rules are due. So with that, the only thing that municipalities can't prohibit is a delivery from a retailer who is not in the town to somebody's home. So that can happen no matter what. If the council does nothing at this point, then we're automatically committed to allow all of the licenses for 5 years before we could then think about opting out. If we opt out at this point, we can opt back in at any time. There is no waiting period. Since the rules and regulations have yet to be adopted, opting out now gives the council the opportunity to review any applications that they might receive on an individual basis. So over the last 2 years, the council and the planning board have put a lot of time into updating and rewriting our zoning ordinance. And any of the licenses that might come up would also require us to go back and amend the zoning ordinance. So there's a level of time that's required to do that. And again, with August 22nd coming up and not having all the rules and regulations as to what licensees are required to do, this is why we have this prohibition ordinance on the books right now. So hopefully that gave you more than you needed to know about this law. So I will now open the public hearing to anyone who wants to comment on this ordinance. So you can raise your hand. I see Paige Nielsen's hand go up first.
Hi, yes, my name is Paige Nielsen and I'm the Youth Engagement Coordinator for Community in Crisis. And we have a few youth members from our Youth Leadership Council who are on the call today that would like to speak. So if you are okay with that, I would like to pass it along to Mara first.
Yeah, it's just each person can have 3 minutes. So that's kind of our general rule for everybody. And if you look, I'm not sure where Anthony is. Anthony, wave, hold up your sign. He'll has a little timer for you. So
Okay, great. Okay, so Mara, go ahead.
okay, Maura, just unmute yourself. There you go.
Hello, my name is Marwood Lametanelia. I'm a junior at Ridge High School and a youth volunteer for Community in Crisis. Many of us question how the problem of underage drinking even exists, given that the legal drinking age is 21, but the answer lies straight in front of our faces. Alcohol is easily accessible. Teenagers in our community, as well as across the entire country, have found ways to obtain alcohol through siblings, parents, and the use of fake IDs. There are dozens of liquor stores in our town where underage people can illegally purchase alcohol. With the legalization of marijuana stores in our area, marijuana will become a greater threat to our young community, mirroring the popularity and easy accessibility of alcohol. The appeal for marijuana will be even greater. Underage people will find ways to purchase it, and our rising generation will have the notion that drugs are harmless. Even though the sale of marijuana to people under the age of 21 is prohibited, marijuana companies still reach youth in legal states. For example, it was reported that in Washington state, 61% of high schoolers believe that marijuana is easy to obtain. Even when marijuana was illegal in our area, hundreds of teenagers found ways to get it. By opening marijuana stores, we are simply fueling their fire and making it significantly easier to fall down the dangerous path of drugs. Thank you.
Thank you, Maura. You have somebody next, Paige?
Yes, I'm sorry. Rohan, do you want to go?
Yes, hi. My name is Rohan Panjwani, and I'm also a youth volunteer at the Community in Crisis. And so basically, marijuana has been legalized by the state, but today we meet to try and ban the presence of marijuana retailers, growers, and distributors in Bernardsville. If it's been legalized, why do we even do this? If it's been legalized, it must be good, right? No. We meet today not just because we are concerned about the detrimental effects of marijuana itself, but we also meet to consider other aspects. Imagine this. You wake up in the morning and head to town for some bagels and coffee. Instead, right next to your bagel shop, there is a marijuana cultivator. You can hear the music being played inside, see all the local customers coming in for their purchases, or the cultivation process itself is active. Potentially, the smell and the odor of marijuana wafting from the store could impact the shop next door and your food. Not only is the smell coming from the marijuana shop making your time less enjoyable, it could also impact your health. A new study found that secondhand marijuana smoke could be more hazardous to one's health than secondhand smoke from cigarettes. How would that make you feel? Would you still want the bagel? In fact, this issue has impacted a town in Michigan. After complaints about marijuana odors from citizens, the town council of Bessemer votes to purchase a device to measure odor strength and is considering an odor ordinance and fines to combat the problem. Now, there is a clear issue that not only you, but many citizens of this town will have to complain about, possibly ruining the image of the town in their eyes. Clearly, past the actual effect of the drug, the presence of the shops themselves damage the town and the citizens living in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Rohan.
Thank you,
Okay, we
Rohan.
have one more member that is going to speak, and she is speaking for herself, and there is one other person who could not be on the call, if you don't mind her saying his testimony as well.
Okay.
Go ahead, Jabin.
Hi everyone, my name is Jabin Sheikh. I'm a junior at Ridge and I'm also a youth volunteer for Community in Crisis. Making marijuana so easily accessible in our community will leave adolescents under the false impression that marijuana use is not detrimental to their bodies, minds, and futures. The adolescent brain is not fully developed and is very vulnerable to damage from the use of marijuana. It has been linked to an increased risk for depression and suicide, and even psychosis, and it can negatively impact cognitive abilities and academic performance. I would imagine that everyone here is aware of the devastating effects marijuana can have on a young developing person's brain and body. But are we also recognizing that marijuana has the capability of destroying a promising teenager's future? It is quite clear that Bernardsville and Bernards Township are brimming with brilliant students, talented athletes, and individuals who can make a real impact on the world. Opening marijuana retailers will only hinder these bright futures and promote the idea that our community is okay with selling a substance, which according to data from the National Monitoring the Future Study will increase the likelihood of youth using alcohol and other drugs. This is what frightens my friends and I the most, that our very own peers have a much higher chance of falling under the harmful influence of marijuana if a marijuana retailer were to open. The data on youth marijuana use does not lie. I'll also be sharing a statement from another youth volunteer for Community in Crisis named Joshua Sprinkle. My name is Joshua Sprinkle, and I lived in Medford, Oregon for around 9 years. Prior to moving into Liberty Corner last June, soon after Medford legalized non-medical cultivation and uses of marijuana in 2014, a person could stand on any street corner downtown, and along with the mountains, see one or more dispensaries. I remember distinctly the one directly adjacent to the children's wing of the local library. Similarly, any field left unplowed was populated with grow tents intended for cultivation of cannabis. Medford quickly became known for more than just its wine and pears, and one of those fields was along the bus route to my high school. The first time a classmate offered me marijuana was in the 6th grade, but nothing could have prepared me for the quite literal stench of freshman year. I can name several students from every single one of my classes that year who claimed they smoked or used pot on a regular basis. It was impossible to ignore fellow teenagers, freshmen through seniors, boys and girls, who were completely dependent on its mind-altering effects. Navigating the first year of high school with new academic pressures and expectations, along with a brand new season of self-discovery, is made infinitely more challenging with the distraction of people you knew from elementary school coming to first period with a high. The decisions at hand and in relation to dispensaries and all of the above are not merely of principle or ideology. The decision to zone for these establishments is the decision to bring marijuana into the culture and classroom of every local student, bar none. Take it from a student and fellow human who has lived through the inevitable reality of letting this substance into the community. Do not let this happen. This tarnishes the name of a town, clouds the minds of its students, and serves as a gateway for many. Thank you.
Thank you, Javine. I don't think we got all the addresses for our last couple of speakers. Javine, can you just give your address for our clerk?
Yes, my address is 12 Parkwood Lane, Basking Ridge, New Jersey. I can repeat that also if you need.
That's good. Yeah.
And Rowan?
Yeah, mine is 39 Handsome Road, Basking Ridge, New Jersey.
And I don't think we got Morris. Did we get one?
Mine is 12 Homestead Road, Basking Ridge, New Jersey.
Okay. We good? We get everybody? Okay.
What was the name of the person whose statement you read from? I'll note that person's name.
Joshua Sprinkle.
That's the one. Okay. And what was that person's address?
You know his address?
You know his address? If you don't know, that's okay. That's right.
I can send it over to you. I don't have
Yeah.
it. On
Okay, just for the record, for the minutes.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. I will.
That'd be
All
great.
right. Thank you so much for letting us speak tonight.
Thank you, Paige. Would anyone else like to be heard? Looking for hands? Nobody? Oh, Jan Greco, I see you there.
I'm sorry, it takes me so long to figure out how to do everything. So I appreciate, that's awesome that these kids stood up and voiced what they had to say, but they're speaking as kids and they're not speaking as adults who have chronic syndromes and anxiety and all the other medical reasons why medical marijuana is great and should be approved and appreciated here in town. You know what? I have a junior in high school. I don't want him smoking pot any more than anyone else does. But it's not about the kids. It's about the adults. It's about medical. It's about what could be beneficial to the life of the town and not, I don't know, looking at it as a drug.
Okay, Jan, would you just give your address, please?
41 Maple Village Court in Burnsville.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak? No? Seeing none? Anthony, do you see any?
No, I don't see anybody.
Okay, then I will close the public hearing on this ordinance.
I'll move to pass ordinance 2021-1876 on final reading and adopt as published.
I'll second.
All right, roll call,
Well,
please.
do the council members have an opportunity to speak? We rushed right into this vote. I just want to be able to explain my vote. Actually, that's what it is.
Okay, you want to do it now or when you're called to vote?
Whatever's best.
Let's do a roll call and each council person, if they want to elaborate, can elaborate. Okay.
You have to bring it up.
Mr. Donahue?
Yeah, I just quickly, I don't remember the kids who spoke pretty eloquently, and just introducing more intoxicants into or normalizing them is a poor decision on the voters' part in New Jersey. Yeah, I'm supportive of this.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes, I'd like to explain my vote coming up. I'm going to vote in favor of the ordinance, but I want to explain why, because I'm a bit conflicted. I supported when we last discussed this, and I supported rather vigorously the approval for medical dispensaries. I believed in it then, and I believe in it still. I thought it was good for Bernardsville. I thought it would be good economically, and I thought it would be good for the Somerset Hills area on a humanitarian basis. However, the current legislation that was passed by the state does not permit any such selectivity. So a medical dispensary would also be allowed to be a purveyor of recreational marijuana, and we could not avoid that. And I'll be forthright about this, I voted against the referendum. I supported decriminalization, but not legalization of marijuana. And moreover, in November 2019, the New Jersey League of Municipalities was lobbying the state for a 3 to 5% tax, with preferably 5%, 3% being the base. With anything less, the concern is that the tax revenue, which is based on gross receipts, and therefore unpredictable, and also if there were many dispensaries may not have gross receipts enough to support the infrastructure needed for a municipality. And so I'm concerned that the 2% tax would be insufficient for us, and it may end up costing the borough money. So therefore, I'm going to vote to approve this ordinance, but I do so wanting to see the rules and regulations and the experience elsewhere, and then come back at a future time to relook at the idea of a medical dispensary. So I vote yes.
Ms. McCready?
Yes.
Mr. McQueen?
I vote yes as well, but just a little bit of an explanation. When the state first proposed medical marijuana as an opportunity, at that time, it was my opinion that they were doing so as an entryway for legalized marijuana in the state. It's my opinion, again, that the actions of the state as they've passed the new legislation and pushed it through, all the things that Dr. Hammond is talking about are 100% true.
Oh, sorry. Wait, we got muted.
You're muted, Chad. You hit the mute button.
Somehow we got muted.
Really? And what I said was so good, too.
Sorry.
So I'll start again. So I'm voting yes for this evening. During the campaign and when we were discussing medical marijuana, it was my opinion at the time that was nothing more than an entry point for the state to get legal marijuana available in every town in this state. The actions of the governor have reinforced that opinion of mine. Everything that Dr. Hammond's saying is correct. They've fully blurred the lines between medical and legalized marijuana. I'm an emphatic yes, supporting the prohibition of this time, and it's going to be very hard to change my mind.
Mr. O'Day?
I'm going to vote yes on the basis that this is a decision that can be revisited in the future, whereas if we did not implement a plan like this at this time, as per the mayor's earlier description, we would have no ability to revisit or change anything for a 5-year period. That would be unacceptable in my mind. So I think this is the correct approach. If there is justification and support for changing any of the provisions, we have the ability to do that in the future. And if there's appropriate consideration for something like that, then we can look at it at the appropriate time. But this is the correct approach for our town for the near term.
Mrs. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well, and the mayor in her summary mentioned that this can be revisited down the road, but we are in a time crunch, and the correct vote to make right now is yes for this ordinance.
Okay, so the ordinance passes, and I think Dr. Hammond's point is well taken, that when this originally started, the money coming to the local municipality, the percentage of the tax was around 5 or 6%. And the fact that it is now capped at 2, I think doesn't do a lot to help the borough in terms of revenue. So I don't know why that got changed, but somewhere along the line. So thank you all for your input, and thank you to the people who spoke today. We now have a public hearing on ordinance 2021-1877 concerning alarm systems and supplementing and amending chapter 3 of the Borough Code entitled Police Regulations. Would anyone from the public like to be heard on this ordinance? I am not seeing anybody. So I will close the public hearing. John, would you like to move this one?
Sure, just give me 1 second to pull up the right verbiage. I move to pass ordinance 2021-1877 on final reading and adopt as published.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Ms. Zamara?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Mr. McQueen?
Yes.
Ms. McGreedy?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
We now move on to resolutions. We have resolutions 2180 through 2195. I believe, can we add this now, 96? While
Yeah.
we're here?
That's fine.
We'll be adding 96, which was fire company appointment for Peter Serignano. I don't know if I said that right, Serignano. So are there any on the list that you would like to pull off or just and discuss separately?
I had a question about 2194.
2194, which is,
That had to do with the post-travel quarantine.
yeah,
It mentions in it several times that the reference to fully vaccinated, and I think we ought to make it clear somewhere in the document that fully vaccinated doesn't mean that you've gotten the second of the Moderna or Pfizer vaccine or the one J&J vaccine. You don't become really fully vaccinated until approximately 2 weeks after those doses. So I think if we're talking about guidance for quarantine or activities once one returns from travel, that ought to be included in there rather than implying that just you've had the second vaccine that you're fully vaccinated.
Doesn't fully vaccinated mean that it's the 2 weeks after the shot? Or should we define that more? Is that what you're saying?
I think we need to define it, because otherwise someone could say, and in fact, we've seen this, and this is actually why we're seeing so-called breakthrough COVID, is somebody says, well, I got my second shot, and therefore I can now go and do things with impunity. And that's not the case. In fact, the incubation time for COVID is somewhere in the order of 5 days from exposure, where the vaccines don't take full effect and immunologically until about 2 weeks after the vaccination.
Yeah, I think we can put that in parentheticals, Jeff, and take, I
Yeah,
agree.
I agree. That was going to be my suggestion.
Yeah,
too.
I just wanted to, since we're going to be talking about rules and regulations that pertain to our staff, I think we ought to be clear.
Yeah, but I mean, we do need to be careful though, because J&J is different than the 2 shots, right? It's longer. It's, not 86% effective, I think 28 days after the shot. So
That's correct. That's even
we
longer.
need to
So I
find
think,
the proper wording, I guess, for it.
right. So the idea behind this then, and we could get guidance officially from our Board of Health, but the intent that I wanted to bring this up is that no one should think that just because they've had the vaccination that they're now fully vaccinated. There is a lag period.
So the parenthetical could say, including the appropriate wait time for the vaccine, for the vaccine administered.
Yeah, except they don't really tell you.
Isn't there CDC guidance? I mean,
Yeah, there's very clear CDC guidance on this, but like Gina was saying, they don't tell you when you're getting your shot. This was a communication that we just had to put out. We were constantly putting out in Little League because it's not clear. So, Jeff, I would be willing to pass this as amended with you providing Jack the language from the Board of Health. Is that an acceptable solution?
Yes. In fact, I've seen that language elsewhere, so we could adopt. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the resolution. I just want it to be specific so that there's no misunderstanding.
Yeah, where did the language come from for this ordinance? Do we know?
Labor Council.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, and Jeff, it could even be generic, saying per manufacturer's guidance plus the appropriate wait time. I mean, we could make it less specific so it wasn't vaccine specific. You know what I mean? But I trust your guidance on this.
Okay, thank you. Any other that we have questions or want to discuss?
So, Mayor, do we have to pull this out to pass it as amended?
Do not, because it's being revised prior to adoption. So it's not really being amended. It's just being revised prior to introduction.
Thank you, Jack.
Or prior to adoption.
And I'll just take my opportunity to interject to our staff. It's not part of the resolution, nor would I suggest it should be, but I think we really ought to follow CDC guidance. And at this time, the CDC really is discouraging international travel.
Yeah, I don't think anybody really is looking to do that right now. Hopefully, I know that with the variants that are out there. Any other ones that we want to discuss? I think it's exciting that we have Leah Horowitz, who I believe is here. I thought I saw her, and excited to have her start. There she is. So welcome. You're starting tomorrow, yes?
Yeah, I start tomorrow. I'm very excited.
Welcome, Leah.
Welcome. We're glad to have you on board. And I know, where is he? Is he here too?
Bob was here, yes.
Bob is really looking forward to it as well.
I bet he is.
So
welcome to Bernardsville.
Thank you. I actually live in the area, so I've grown up knowing Bernardsville forever. So I'm really excited to now be able to make change and do fun things with you guys.
Yeah, but we just pulled you down the road from Mount Airy from the Y here, so that's great.
Yeah. I've been local my whole life.
That's great. And I know as we're gearing up for all the spring and summer things, Bob really is going to work you. You'll be busy. So welcome aboard. Glad
welcome to the team.
Thank you so much.
Anything else on the resolutions, or would someone like to move them?
I'll move resolutions 2180 through 2196.
I'll second.
Roll call, please.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes.
Mr. Hammond?
Yes.
Ms. McCready?
Yes.
Mr. McQueen?
Yes.
Mr. O'Day?
Yes.
Ms. Zamara?
Yes, and Tom O'Day was probably going to thank Peter Sirignano for volunteering for the fire department. Thank you so much. We need our volunteers. Thank you, Mr. Sirignano.
I don't think he's on here.
Thank you, Christine.
I don't think he's on. You're welcome.
Yeah. But that's great. The more volunteers we get, we're one of the few, I think, that still have a whole volunteer first aid and fire company. And it's just been great that we've continued to get volunteers for that. Okay, now we move on to discussion items. The free tree event on April 24th. Did Ed want to say something on that? Or Johanna, anybody want to?
I'm just unmuting. I think we're fine as long as we have the pool and the drive-through, which is the safest way to do it. We did it last year. People really liked it. So this year, I think we're going to also have the Environmental Commission giving out free bags, which also very liked by everyone. And there's going to be a lot of information because the shade tree people will be there discussing the trees, and the environmental people will be there discussing a number of things. One of them is well test kits, which will be available, but I'm not sure if they're going to be sold there or if they have to be picked up at the municipality. But the event is shaping up very nicely.
Okay, and that's a Saturday, yes?
Yes, it is.
And is it when it rains?
It's 9 to 1.
Is it rain or shine?
Yeah, I mean, how could the Environmental Commission and Shade Tree say no to rain? I mean, yeah, we'll be there, and it's a drive-through, which is another reason why it shouldn't be too hard. We'll have to bring some tents if it comes to that.
Yeah, great. You know how many trees you're going to have?
At this point, I will say that everybody is so interested in trees that the state didn't have as many as I had hoped, but there should be 400 trees available.
Wow, that's great. Thank you. And thank you for doing this. And I also want to thank you, Ed, for a very successful winter farmers market.
Well, thank you for helping too. I mean, it was a real group effort. It's wonderful.
I think people really appreciated having it. I think the vendors appreciated it. So, and you organizing it and dealing with all the vendors is a big volunteer job, and we really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you.
Can I chime in? Is that allowed?
Not really. No.
I just want to say this is the first that I'm hearing about the trees, and I go every single year because I'm trying to reforest my depleted forest in my backyard. So I think that it needs to go out in the bubble. It needs to go everywhere so people know that it's happening this year.
Well, you can spread the word as well. I
will. Yes, absolutely.
I just spoke with the editor of the newspaper. He has it up online, although I've been advised by some people, since some people wanted to have you have to realize some of these things happen at the last minute, and some people wanted the tree event to be at the train station. And so there was a little snafu in getting the publicity out, and we ironed that out because the train station is great, but to have a drive through a train station is kind of confusing. And we did it well at the pool, and the trees are only for residents. I hope Jan, you're a resident. I guess you don't have to be on.
Yes, she is.
Okay, good. We did have some problem advertising a little too early a couple of years ago, and people were showing up from other towns, and that was a little. We worked it out, but it was a little unsettling that they thought they were free. They should be able to get them. But the way the state does it is that they try to get each town to have their own event. And so we tried to make this as I said, so it is up on the newspaper. I hope you look at the newspaper website, and we'll be there on this Thursday in the actual print edition. And we certainly will have it up on the bubble and on other pages as well.
It's been well publicized in past years with multiple pictures on social media, and if memory serves me, some years you run out of trees pretty early, so, as well. Are you going to have multiple types of trees again this year? I think in the past you've had sometimes 3 or 5 different species.
We'll have 4 species. The state doesn't tell us what they are in advance because they're still getting their act together. But we have pictures. I will have pictures printed in a little book, which will be available at the event. And everyone, Johanna knows this, and I don't think anyone from the Shade Tree is on, but some of the volunteers know as well, to be able to discuss each species. So that goes over very well with the people who come up to get their hint. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Ed.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine. We're on the mayor's update. What have I done? And I think, Jeff, you were on this with me as well. I attended the Somerset County Planning Partners Forum. And there was a presentation by United for ALICE. And ALICE stands for Asset Limited, Income Constrained and Employed. So they are people who are above the poverty level but below living wage. So this is a national project to address that group, to help them close that gap. There was also a presentation by Leanne McGowan of RideWise talking about the Electric Vehicle Coalition. And then there was another webinar specifically on EV-ready communities that RideWise presented. And they are a resource that we can use if we move towards EV vehicles. They will be doing a workshop in May with an electric vehicle vendor who will be providing demo drives. So they're trying to get more interest into EV. They also talked about, I think you get points for Sustainable Jersey as well for adding any EV to your fleet or having a charging station. So they suggested that we look at our fleet inventory, start tracking fleet emissions, and looking at vehicles that we could replace with an EV. Part of involved in that is looking at zoning ordinances to see where charging stations could be installed. There'll be more information on that in May at the Sustainable Jersey Summit. Also, the Director of Public Works, Paul McCann, talked about they purchased a Chevy Bolt for the county, I think for the sheriff's office. And one of the things they talked about, you also have to change your parking ordinances if you put in some public charging stations so that people don't park in those spots, or that you're only in that spot when you're charging. You can't charge and then just leave your car there. So there's, you also need electrical permits and I think a building permit for putting bollards out. So that should be, there'll be more information coming on that, and something they want each municipality to fill out a readiness assessment to see where we all are in moving towards EV. I also attended a stigma-free Somerset County meeting. Coming up in May, it's Mental Health Month, and stigma-free means free of the shame surrounding mental illness and substance abuse. So they are looking for ways to raise awareness during Mental Health Month, doing some high school outreach, having Friday night storytellings, and they're putting together a toolkit for teens for how to talk to your peers. I attended Congressman Malinowski's briefing on combating online extremism, which was really very interesting. I think you can still probably download it, talking about how the algorithms lead to additional extremism. So if you click on one site, it will recommend another site that might be a little bit more extreme, and then another one, and and how those algorithms lure you into more polarized sites, which they're trying to address, and having some of the online formats change their algorithms. Of course, I was at the last farmer's market. I got to draw the coupons for the summer market with the 3 winners. And again, thank you to Ed and all his volunteers. I attended a mayor's wellness campaign webinar on reducing social isolation. which is really becoming more prominent, especially for seniors after COVID. So we're looking at ways to address that. And we reconvened the Mayor's Wellness Committee. We had some new members signed up, and they'll be trying to do a community health assessment survey. I was on the call with New Jersey Transit regarding the dam and the train station. So I don't know if that's in your report, Tom C.
That's okay, Mayor. Go ahead.
Well, it's just the discussion on the dam was that I think they're coming tomorrow to look at the survey because there was some question as to whether they are really on part of the property or not. So that's not resolved yet. The train station, they did agree to give us a longer lease. So that was encouraging because we did not get any proposals to our RFP, mainly because we could only offer a 5-year lease. So we may be able to get a 9-year lease. I attended a listening session on climate change that was a kickoff for the formation of the League of Municipalities Mayor's Climate Change Work Group. And the purpose of the group is to provide feedback on matters related to the implementation of New Jersey DEP's climate change initiatives. So they're really, the DEP has really been taking a lot of positive action to make people more aware of climate change and what we can do on a municipal level. We had a housing committee meeting, downtown Bernardsville board meeting. And there were 2 more sessions this past weekend to paint the mural. And there will be 1 more public session on the 24th. So if you haven't painted yet, you still have 1 more chance to sign up. They'll also be doing a few more with the middle and high school students. And we're still on target for an unveiling on Memorial Day. So that is all of my report. Anybody have questions? You all still awake?
Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so that was, now we have our administrators update. So
Sure.
play Tom.
Thank you, Mayor. We do have a few topics under new business that may take some discussion. So I'll be brief in the points to share with the council and the community. I think the most exciting one from my perspective was that we went out to bid for our capital bond issue, which we were anticipating to be about $5.1 million for the projects we previously discussed. But because of the AAA bond rating we received, the bids from the various banks came in much better than we anticipated. So actually the note is going to be for 4.9 million rather than 5.1. The interest rate that we'll be paying is 1.34%. I had asked the consultant to share with us what the interest rates were from towns about our size issuing about the same size note recently that were AA rather than AAA. And so this was very good news. And I think it reaffirms the work that the council and the finance committee and the staff are doing to be good fiscal managers, and it pays off. So congratulations all around. I would like to thank Chief Valentine and Chief Miller and everyone who was involved in the Office of Emergency Management for getting our plan approved, which by the state and the county, which the council blessed this evening. It's a lot of work. It's about, I would say, at least a half a foot tall document with various chapters and sections. And without having that updated and in place, we would not qualify for FEMA grants in the event of an emergency. So good work to everyone involved there. We are now out to bid for the Crestview Road improvement. We hope to be able to award that contract on May 10th. I know people have been looking forward to that. And then I'm very optimistic that we've made good progress on the PBA contract and hope to have more to report to council next time we meet.
Thank you. And I guess we're moving on then to the change in the personnel committee. So you can kind of lead that on too, yeah?
Yes. So this idea sort of arose from something that Councilman McQueen put forth a little bit ago, asking for the various volunteer committees in towns to revisit their charters and their mission statements and so forth. And at the same time, Mayor, when you advanced the diversity training and asked the volunteers to be part of that, the idea sort of emerged that, you know, as a municipality, personnel, yes, extends to our paid staff, but we also have some obligations and liabilities and responsibilities for our volunteers as well. So the thought was, why don't we take the personnel committee and consider broadening its mission so that it becomes more akin to an organizational development committee, where we provide support and liaison back to council from the committees and the volunteers. We focus on things like mission, vision, cultural values, maintaining our organizational charts, making sure everyone understands expectations, and that goes to the departments as well. So to research benchmarks, to put those forward, in addition to the traditional things the committee did. So I thought that might be a good place to start. And I think, I'll let the council members discuss it, and I'll take your cues.
And Tom, maybe I'll pick it up from there. I think this is a wonderful idea. It's in line with many of the discussions that we've had in regards to organizing ourselves internally and also within our committees better and more strategically. I think an additional scope and additional responsibilities of this group will help us unify that. So I'm supportive of this plan.
I think the other thing, a lot of this concept came out of our strategic planning sessions. I think this was one of the priorities, was to have a better sense of our internal operating and more of a governance kind of outlook. So I think this will fit right in with the strategic plan that we still have to finish up, but we were close. So yeah, and I think now, Jack, this would have to be changed in our administrative code, yes?
Yes, and I can work with Tom and come up with some language for the next meeting.
Great.
Yeah,
I think it actually institutionalizes what we might have been doing off and on informally. This grew organically this year on the committee as we started discussing the hierarchy within the borough, the table of organization. We started talking about cross coverage and essential workers and essential capabilities, and it was clear that what we're really talking about is organizational management and organizational development.
Yes.
Okay, so can we then is anybody else want to say anything on it, or are we all good with it and we can have Jack and Tom work out the language a little bit for review next time?
Because the current language is very sparse. Personnel committee shall monitor all matters involving borough officers and employees and make recommendations to the entire council. So Tom and I'll come up with something.
Yeah, Jack, I'd like to empower Tom. He's talked about having a world-class administrative and a world-class council. And I think he's got the things that he's got the idea in his mind to help craft this. So I'd like to empower him to work with you to get this in front of us.
Yeah, no, I agree.
We're actually pretty far down along the way. Tom is ahead of us on that. He's got, I think, a 3-page outline that he and I talked about this in advance of the meeting. We thought it might be premature to put it out there and want to just put out the concept first. But we're not far from what you want, Councilman McQueen.
Sounds like I'll be plugging Tom's language into an ordinance.
Okay.
I concur.
Great. So we'll have that for the next agenda. 6G, we have,
Yeah, and this is a continuation of an item that I think I brought. They all blend together. One council or two councils ago, and I know that Jack and Tom were able to go downstream with this. And the general thought process is just to refresh everybody's memory where this came from. So with COVID, we passed some temporary. We eased enforcement in regards to outdoor dining. We then subsequently changed our zoning to allow many of the things that are going on right now. However, folks that have now implemented, and not to get confusing, outdoor dining without going back for a site plan requires some site plan changes. And I know Tom and Jack have worked out a streamlined process to make this possible.
So Mayor, what we're proposing, and I think first of all, in the big picture, this corresponds with the vision that I've been hearing from council for the future of Main Street, and to become much more pedestrian friendly, outdoorsy, more of what we planners call good downtowns, the community's living room. And so it's not necessarily about accommodating cars, but at the same time, we have to make use of the infrastructure we have. So what we'll be proposing is really a 3-point plan for those restaurants that have outdoor seating, outdoor dining in their parking spaces. The suggestion is that one, they demonstrate that whatever parking spots they've lost as a result of having outdoor dining, and this is when COVID goes away, now and in the future. So they demonstrate that they're under an agreement with someone that's within a quarter mile to make up for whatever parking spaces they're losing. So in some cases, that might be a church parking lot. In other cases, it may be an office parking lot that's not being used in the evenings. So demonstrate to us that you have that parking. 2, agree that should you lose that excess parking, you would have to convert your outdoor dining back into parking. And 3, that you would come into the planning board for a site plan so we could document exactly how much density is going to be there, hours of operation, lighting plans. If there's going to be an increase in the number of patrons, and that sort of changes perhaps the location of trash bins and things like that. So come in, let us document that, work with us, and then that would allow for outdoor dining where maybe none existed before, while maximizing existing infrastructure.
And Tom, I know the last part of that was discussed, and I'll bring this up formally for Jack's opinion. So since these would not require a variance because they're within the current zoning, they do require, I believe, planning board application. I'd like to formally propose that for these site plan adjustments for outdoor dining for this particular circumstance, that we waive the application with the exception, all the application fees with the exception of the legal fees that are incurred within the borough.
Yeah, I think we could do that, and I think we should include all the escrow deposits for the planner if need be.
Yep.
And the attorney and the engineer to the extent necessary.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm a little confused. I thought like during this year, the calendar year 2021, we were simply waiving enforcement and not requiring these applications. Are you talking about applications that go beyond the end of 2021?
Yeah. So knowing how quickly our planning board moves, Tom, I want to make sure that if folks have, we've got them through the end of this year, and Jack has informed us that we cannot extend it again if the emergency is lifted. I want to make sure that folks have ample time to meet whatever hurdles they need to meet to keep this permanent beyond the end of the year.
I think that's fine. I mean, I think we just shouldn't incur costs that's unreimbursed. I think that's it's one thing to say we don't charge them for it, but it's another to say that we'll incur costs but not be reimbursed for it. Is there a possibility of that in what we're proposing? Well,
and that's why I think we should, obviously, if we have legal fees for our legal counsel, we have to be reimbursed for that. But I think your language is the right language. Any fees, we shouldn't charge anything in excess of what was absolutely necessary.
So what we'll do is we'll waive the application fee, but we'll still charge the escrow deposit.
Well, I think that that's important because if there's something that has to be rectified later on, I mean, we give them their escrow back if we don't use it, right? I mean,
That's correct.
Yes, that's
Right.
correct.
So, I mean, there's no risk of losing it if it's not required. We would only be using it to pay for things that costs that we actually incur.
Yes.
Yeah, it covers all the professionals that.
That's right.
Involved.
I'm fully in favor of this. I wish we could make it permanent. But the question I have is, I'm assuming, but that's why I'm asking, because assumptions can be bad. That when we say post-COVID, that would take effect once the public health emergency declared by the governor has been lifted. Is that correct?
So I'm under the impression that this would stay in place.
Yes, and we could put it into place before the state of emergency is lifted, because it will be a permanent ordinance change within the confines of the MLUL.
Well, then I'm confused because it says it extends it post-COVID.
Well, I think that's just the heading on the discussion.
Yeah.
But
So
the idea is
my question then was going to be is how much time does the restaurateur have to make these applications if in fact if for the sake of argument if next week the governor lifts the public health emergency, how much time would they have to apply for the application change?
I mean, we've technically waived it through December 31st.
Yes, we waived it through December 31st.
Okay, then let me reframe it then. In December, if it gets lifted effective January, are we going to give enough time to the restaurant owners to be able to make the appropriate applications or plans for this to take effect?
I mean, Jeff, in many ways, that's why I have urgency with this right now.
Yeah, that's why we're starting
now.
Okay.
Right. The message to the restaurateurs should be: if you want to make this permanent, beyond December 2021, you got to start now.
You got to start now.
That's the message, because we don't know what's happening after December 2021. Yeah. That's why we created the December 2021 deadline.
Yeah.
So that they would have notice to get going.
And I would, Jack, and I know that there's always some fine line in here. I would propose that the council write a memo to the planning board that says, look, this is important, and we would appreciate expediting or whatever, as strong a language as we could use to suggest to move this forward.
I suggest that you're the class 3 member, right?
I am, yes.
I suggest that you convey that message on behalf of the full council.
You can fully expect, if I have that permission of the council, you could expect that it'll be said loud and clear.
I didn't want to give you any more responsibility, but.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments on the topic? I think anything we can do to help our restaurants succeed. They've had a really tough year and a half here almost. So I think it's a great idea. And thank you, Chad, for championing this. Next, we have change to the ordinance authorizing payment for Kiwanis Field improvements. We had a letter from, I see Greg is here. We did this last year. We authorized half of the costs for the field renovations. And I believe then you did a second field in the meantime. And so you're coming back asking, and usually what we're looking to use the funds for the 11,000, the first ordinance that we approved, we're using the open space funds that from the interest portion of it. So anytime that we use that money, we have to ask a number of committees for their input on the spending. So on your second request, I believe, Anthony, you sent out those requests.
I did, yes.
And I know I saw the one from the historic group, and they said they had no opinion. I don't know if you heard from anyone else.
I just open space. That's the only two that I heard. It was HPAC and open space.
Recreation.
Recreation. Yes.
Recreation. I didn't see that response. Sorry.
What was Recreation's response, Bob?
We went over this back in December, and we are in favor of this, the improvements to Kiwanis. And if you've been there recently, you have to take a look at it. These fields look really great. I just want to say a quick thank you to Public Works and Greg and SHLL. It's been a pleasure to work with this organization. Parents are always really passionate, but a lot of times they're not organized. And it's great to work with, these organizations that I'm coming to Bernardsville with. They put a lot of time and effort into this, and really shows if you go up there.
Mayor, I don't know if you
Bob.
got your question answered, but the Open Space Committee also was okay with it.
Okay.
So I just wanted to say, because a couple of things came to my mind when I read the March 4th memo. One is that it references a December 2020 meeting, and that, you know, essentially implies approval from the Recreation Committee for the extra funding, which of course doesn't come from the Recreation Committee, comes from the council. And then the gap in time between when the work must have been performed, which I assume was maybe November of 2020.
Ultimately, it was in late November through mid-December.
Yeah. So the contractor and the discussions that to do the extra field must have occurred 6 months ago, and seemingly the first I heard of this was when it went on tonight's agenda, or about a week or two before. So I do think that, you know, the process could be improved here. I'm supportive of the approach here, but we were, you know, trying to, you know, be cautious with making commitments to the funding before the final report from Branstetter Carroll, and this is, you know, double the amount. It seems to have occurred sort of in the background. It's already committed before we, you know, came before the council. I just think that in the future, if we're going to do something like this, we should have a better process. If this came up and it was from one of our roadwork projects or something else that has, you know, maybe less popular support as we'd have for this kind of project, you know, we get a lot of criticism for doing it this way. So I'm supportive of this. I think we should move ahead with it, but I do think that it does lend itself to be improved greatly as far as the process going forward.
Well, to that point, Tom, I think, so you mentioned Branstetter, and we talked about it in CH6G1, this organizational development committee. Going forward, I think we need to very clearly define how we want all of our open space fund expenditures to sort of flow through. And I don't, you know, we passed the resolution, not the resolution, it was on the referendum last year. And I don't think as a council, we sat down and say, look, this is exactly, you know, in the future with this stuff, how it's going to go forward. And I think we probably should quickly, before we get the final Branstetter report.
But I think legally, I think Councilman O'Day is right. I think the council has to approve any expenditures. You know, the Recreation Advisory Committee does not have that authority, and it should be
referendum
approved
last
in
year
advance of the work being done.
The referendum last year only said that it was permissible for us to now use these funds in a variety of ways. It didn't.
That's right.
It didn't say that the council was giving up its responsibilities to decide. So this is not a committee function. This is a council function. And like Councilman O'Day, I'm all in favor of this, but I don't think we should spend the money first and then come for permission second.
It's analogous to a capital improvement fund ordinance that just appropriates the money, but then in order to spend the money, you also need council authorization.
Ideally, we would request plans that you know, various entities have, that the Recreation Department has for the open space areas, and we would include that as part of the annual budget process where we weigh priorities, and then we can just reach out to all the boards at once if we want to keep doing that.
But again, there should be a resolution awarding a contract by the council before the work is done.
I just want to say up to Councilman Hammond's point, we spoke with this organization about you know, getting the clearance ahead of time and not doing this reimbursement model anymore. I just want to put that out there, that we were encouraging all organizations to do that, to give us the plans going forward, and then we can make a recommendation to council. So that's something that we have done, discussed with them. And then this was brought up back in November to us. I think there was a little bit of a drop the ball between the two organizations, and now it's coming back up. But this was discussed pretty thoroughly back in December. So unfortunately, it fell through the cracks until now. But yeah, the reimbursement model is not something we're looking to go forward with in the future.
I think
so, Jack, at this point, do we amend the old ordinance, or do we make a new ordinance for the amount?
Probably we should amend it retroactively. We can introduce at the next meeting.
Okay.
And Mayor, and I think a finer point should be put on this, because I think Little League, you know, they can pay for this on their own. They're asking us to share the cost with them. You know, as I understand, they have a decent income stream from there, which I think is a great model generally. you know, if they can bring something to the table. Other groups just ask for money, but you know, to have the money and ask to share the cost, so they can, you know, it leverages, you know, both sides of it. So I think it's a finer point than like they're, you know, contracting with someone and giving us a bill. I don't think it's quite, you know, it's a little more gray than that.
Yeah, well, and I think we're looking for partnerships with all the groups that use our fields. And, you know, I think it's a great thing to have rather than one group, you know, assuming all the responsibility. It's great to have partners and people that are willing to work with us. And, you know, that way everybody wins. We get a beautiful new field and, you know, everybody, it's a win-win. So it just, I agree with Councilman O'Day. It's the process, you know, unfortunately, you know, we're a bureaucracy and there are rules as to how we can spend money. So we have to follow those rules. But now you know, and
Understood.
Yeah, I mean, this is a project that I think everybody's supportive of, and it's a project that helps the community. I have no problem with the project. I think if you had asked us in November, the answer would be yes. You ask us now, the answer is also yes. So I don't think that changes it. It just makes it, I think, easier and better for us, because then when we have other stuff that comes up and we want to push back on people because it wasn't approved, you know, we can't, you know, they can't point and say, well, why did you do it for them, but you're not going to do it for us, you know? So it's just, you know, kind of keep leveling the playing field for everybody. That's all.
yeah. So we will introduce the ordinance at the next meeting.
Yes.
Okay, great.
Can I just add one thing regarding the response from HPAC? Because they made mention to the fact that the process, as Tom was saying, they would like some clarification as far as going forward, what the process should be. In other words, you know, HPAC, the community garden, for example, is on Dunster Squibb property. And in the past, I have seen requests for fencing or mulch or, you know, take this tree down there. And they would like a clear process as well, as far as how to request those things and what the proper channels are. So if we could get something in place policy-wise, that would cover all of the organizations. You know, we had the community, the 2020 garden where environmental commission came to us. So I guess, you know, just to have some kind of format for that at the next meeting as well would probably be good. It doesn't have to be too elaborate, but just some kind of request.
I think the process is to submit the request to the administrator to bring to the council.
Yeah, and it probably should be part of the budgeting process, that each year, if we reach out to all the committees and ask them for their plans for the year, what, you know, what expenses they think they'll have and they'll need help with.
Yeah, obviously having the ability to plan a year in advance would be very helpful. So for our administrator then, Tom, would you take forward the idea that you come back with some sort of process that would apply to all similar type processes, projects going forward, and as was mentioned by Councilmember Zamara. And I think I saw some advice from Leslie Roberson about how to go about the process, or some of the process steps as well. Tom, I think you were copied on those.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so we will have that for the next meeting. Thank you, Melissa and Greg, for being here tonight.
And we hope to see you on Friday and Saturday, as Melissa said before. Those fields are looking great.
Terrific.
Thanks.
Good.
Is it going to be introduced at next? Can we introduce it this evening, or is it going to be introduced next meeting? Okay.
Well, the work's already done, right? So it's.
Can we introduce it tonight?
Can we introduce it now if there's a number?
Yeah.
Why don't we do that? That way we can speed it up by one meeting.
Yep. Let's see, we can make it, hang on 1 second.
Hang on.
It's an ordinance amending ordinance 20-2018-49 by increasing the, let me get to that. You know, move on to the next topic if you would, and then I'll come back with the title before we close.
And I can't introduce it because I'm recusing myself. So
Mayor and Council, we've had a few requests from businesses that have been experiencing vacancy as a result of COVID. And the request is related to the flat fee that we charge for sewer service. So just so little background, it's a $350 annual fee, and then you get charged your usage rate on top of that. We have a current process that allows you to apply for a waiver from that if your property has been vacant for 2 years or more. So the request is, would council entertain for the duration of the COVID pandemic to also waive that flat fee for vacant properties that haven't been vacant for quite so long. So let's say maybe a year, or prorated somehow if you do happen to secure a tenant.
Anyone?
So when the
This is
public
for
health emergency is
residential?
over, then the waiver goes away? Is that what we're saying?
So the request comes from commercial. I don't see, so the request was for commercial, but you know, it's council's call if you want to extend it to residential. But I'm sorry, Councilman Hammond.
There's at least one residential property in the email from Raphael Noller, it looks like.
Yeah. Well, that was the second part of the question, whether it applies to residential as well. But my question though is, if it hasn't been rented, say in a year, and then the public health emergency is lifted, it's still not going to be rented, presumably for perhaps some time. So does the waiver, or does it revert back? How does that revert back then?
So if it doesn't, if there's no change in your policy technically, if you achieve that 24-month period, because the policy right now says if you're vacant for 2 years, you can apply for the waiver. So this is sort of, we can make this, let's say, what we wanted to recommend is to say if you've been vacant for 12 months, you can apply for the waiver. And if after that 12-month period coming into that second year, you happen to fill it, well, then your charge will just be prorated for the remainder of the year. That's the second year.
And so if we have a residential property that someone's moved out of but hasn't been able to sell that home, could we apply that as well?
We can.
But this discussion came up earlier in the year, I think maybe 10 months ago. And I think we didn't know at the time what the federal government was going to do, how long the situation is going to be. I think, I don't know.
Yeah, I wanted to ask actually, Tom, a similar or a question about that past one as well. Is it the same owner that's inquiring? I thought that the addresses looked similar.
The owner that was inquiring was an office complex.
But there were I thought it was the Church Street, Morristown Road, those two, where Galaxy Nail was, and the business that used to be behind it, which was a dentist, I think. And then it became, I thought it was the same property that we declined.
It's the same owner. In fact, they filed tax appeals. That's how I know that.
Yeah. So we all declined this exact, right? It was this exact request, or is it slightly different?
We have a sense
I wasn't involved with that one.
Do we have a sense of what the impact would be? I mean, how many vacant properties would be eligible for this waiver? I mean, and how it would
so there are a number, as you recall from the study that we did on a downtown, there are a number of vacant properties, but they've been vacant for prior to the COVID emergency.
Okay.
So this would be based on a waiver application where, you know, you can demonstrate that this is a result of COVID, and, you know, you give us the details on it. So it's an application-based process. If we keep it locked into those guardrails, we don't think it'll be more than, you know, $6,000 to $10,000.
Okay.
And we do think that part of that last federal grant is something that that type of grant was developed for.
Good.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. Anybody have a problem with doing that? I think as long as it's COVID related, that's the key, is keeping those parameters.
And this is a one-time request. If there is an application again for next year, he'd have to put in a new application.
We can make that the case, yes.
Or else we have to change the ordinance in order to make
And
it permanent.
so Jack, is this this would be an ordinance, correct?
Well, I think if we're just doing it on a one-time emergency COVID basis, then I think we should just do it as resolution.
I think
rather than amending the ordinance.
I think we're wading into some space here. The request that I'm reading from the emails I've read talks about 1 residential property and 2 commercial properties. We're talking about something that, you know, is for commercial only, but this guy's asking for 1 residential and 2 commercial. We're not sure how many other. I'm not comfortable tonight making a decision that we would change our policy on this. With the information we have, I wouldn't mind looking at it and seeing if there's a rational way to do it.
Yeah, so we'll draft.
I would hope that the money that we're getting is to spur new investment, you know, in the town and bring in a tenant more than, you know, looking at, you know, defraying a cost, you know.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Tom's sort of thought problem, sort of of 2 minds about it. I like kind of a consistent approach to how we do things. And I'm also always, you know, every one person who's in genuine need, always feel like people just glom onto opportunities to shave costs. So yeah, I would need to think about this one.
We've always worried that, you know, some property owners might ask for what would seem like a rent. We talked about the idea of having, you know, what would spur more people, more businesses to be in our town. You know, are we charging the right rents? And of course, that's not a borough council decision. That's a market-based decision. But
yeah, and I guess I'm a little jaded, unfairly. Some of the anecdotal stories I've heard where, you know, it's like, well, it's not enough rent for me to occupy this property, and you know, it's probably unfair, but I'm have to, like, you know, address that with myself, I guess.
But on the other side of the coin, we've also recognized that we want to do everything we can to make ourselves business friendly. So I'm not quite so jaded in my opinion about the motives for this.
I mean, to Tom's point, I mean, this would have to, would this come back as a resolution? Is that what would happen?
Yes.
Yeah, I would do it as a resolution, not an ordinance, if you want to proceed.
Yeah. Why don't we draft something and float it around?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'd just like a little bit more detail, Tom, around exactly which properties we're talking about, whether it's not they're residential, whether they're mixed use, whether they're, you know, all businesses. If they are, you know, you mentioned the several $1,000 number. You know, if we approve this one, we can be sure that there'll be others that come next meeting, you know.
And I like the idea of Councilwoman Gina said about maybe making it year to year to see how things evolve.
Well, I think if we already have a 2-year vacancy ordinance in place, we really just need it just this one time, right?
Yeah.
You know, we have a special time that, you know, if it's been 12 months and you haven't had anybody, we're going to let it go 12 months. But then by the end of the 12 months is over, you're going to have 24 months of vacancy. Otherwise, you're no longer eligible anyway.
Yeah, I'm with you. I believe this is a one-time waiving.
I think we should tie it to COVID too, to make the distinction.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would also like to have them, as part of the application, say what they've done to try and fill that spot.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I was gonna say. Like I looked at these 3 addresses and they don't look like they're actively looking for tenants. So is this an incentive for them to leave it empty, or is this incentive for them to try to find a tenant?
Yeah, we want to avoid that. That there around the country, there are certain places that have vacancy taxes that are tied to a lack of effort to try and fill the spot. So we obviously we don't want to have a vacancy tax, but we also want to make sure that they're making a good faith effort to fill their location.
Yeah, just the unintended consequences that Christine flagged is, I guess, better articulated than what I'm sort of have to think about for a while.
Yeah. It's like when, when you apply for unemployment, you have to show that you've tried to get a job.
You
So
know,
it's
I mean,
kind of that same principle.
we could, as part of this resolution, require some evidence that they've been attempting to get a tenant.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think so.
Yep.
Ask them what efforts they've put into filling it. If they have several real estate listings, they've placed ads, whatever.
I would also want to know, are they, what type of rent are they asking for? Is if it's above market or below market?
I think we should
How
put
they
this on for
establish that.
discussion at the next meeting and come back with a draft resolution, because I think there are a lot of unanswered questions that really shouldn't be decided between meetings.
Yep.
Good point.
And can I also ask that we get the prior requests that we declined earlier in the year? I'd just like to make sure that we're consistent and the reasoning from then to now, if we change our mind or if we stay the same.
We'll dig that up.
Okay.
I think the point that we talked about, sorry, I just think I was looking at the item here. They do get a reduction in their sewer tax automatically when the usage goes down.
Right.
So they're talking about the flat fee, but of course, if you look at their total cost of sewer usage across the year, it has two components. It'll automatically go down as the usage goes down. So that's one element that, they're not, maybe they never paid for in the first place. Maybe they charged the tenant. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so we will have that on for discussion, and as we get more information, we'll discuss it at the next meeting. And then
The more we discuss it, the more I think we're opening a can of worms.
yeah, I know. So let's get all the questions answered that have been brought up, and we'll go from there. I don't see any other items of business. Jack, did
Going
you?
back to the ordinance, how much are we increasing it to? In all my correspondence, I don't see the amount.
I think it was from 11,000 to
11 is what it is
21,000.
now.
To
How much?
21?
21?
21.
Greg, is that correct?
Sorry, it is 21,200 in total.
200, okay.
So the title of the ordinance for introduction tonight would be an ordinance amending ordinance number 2020-1849, entitled an ordinance appropriating $11,000 from the Borough Open Space Trust Fund for reimbursement to the Somerset Hills Little League for renovations to the Kiwanis Little League Field by increasing the amount appropriated nunc-pro-tunc, which means now for then, to $21,200.
Okay, somebody want to move that?
I'll move resolution 2020-1849.
I'll second it.
Oh, this is a new ordinance number. This will be ordinance 21.
Sorry, what's the number?
1878.
I'll still second it.
And I'll still move 2021-1878.
Okay.
Public hearing on April 26th at 7 p.m. Just
Yes.
note that.
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
now we just need an all in favor.
Correct.
Aye.
All in
Aye.
favor?
Aye.
Aye.
With one abstention?
I'm abstaining, yes.
Yep.
Okay, so then we will have a public hearing at the next meeting and a vote. Excellent. Okay, do we have any other new business? Do we need a executive session? I think we delayed what Jack had.
Yep. I have nothing for exec.
Really? Are we, I mean, so it's 8:29.
It's like I have-
Everybody's aware of that, right?
So there was something in the packet, so we're not going to discuss that?
we're
No,
not gonna
Jack
discuss
wanted,
it. I need more time to consult with Green Acres and Aaron Sella.
yeah. So we will have that up for the next meeting, hopefully. Green Acres is always takes time to get all the information.
And this whole situation is really a case of first impression, not only with New Jersey Land Conservancy, but also with Green Acres. So it's a lot more complicated than it seems at first blush.
Yeah.
Well, with that being said, I was planning on at least an hour or two of executive session, so I will move to adjourn.
Wait,
Wait, hold on, wait. I have
Wait.
one question too.
Oh, I
Sorry,
was just
Mayor.
gonna say one thing, don't forget, Wednesday night, our meeting at 7 o'clock, when we have the presentations by, our developers that put in the RFPs. So, hoping we will get a good public turnout for that. And I will just kind of send you all a little description of what we expect how that's gonna go. And, go ahead, Gina.
Yeah, that's actually what I was just going to ask about the meeting, and about what to expect. And, I know it's a public meeting, so I actually was going to ask in closed session. I wasn't sure if I could ask now.
Yeah, no, you can actually, what we were just going to do is, I'm going to give a little intro. We may have Joe DeMarco maybe talk about the process of what comes next. Each of the three developers will give a 15-minute presentation where we don't want, an involved dialogue about, hey, did you think about this? Or, how tall is your buildings? It's really more geared for the public because we're not going to make a decision that night. This is really for the public to get a sense of who these people are, why they're qualified to be a developer, and their vision. So it's not going to be a question and answer involved. It's more for the public to just catch up with where we are. So hopefully not too long and involved, but.
So will there be a public open session then as well?
There has to be, because it's a public meeting.
Yeah.
And it'll be before or after or both? I know sometimes we have.
I think it's just in the beginning.
But you can do it at the end if you wish. There's no legal requirement that it be at the beginning.
Okay, maybe we should do it at the end just for the public to have a chance to comment if they want to.
It's up to you all. But
yeah, I noticed the agenda you had sent, Anthony, is in the beginning. So why don't we move it to the end?
You can move it.
I think, really from the council, all we want you to do, maybe ask some clarifying questions if something wasn't explained clearly, or you just wanted, didn't understand something, but not to get into the specifics of their proposal, because that we will do, there's a whole with the attorney and in small groups and meet with them privately to really get into the, meat and potatoes of what they're proposing. So.
So was there guidance provided to them, like about what they should?
Yes.
Present?
Yeah,
we had
did.
very specific, what
Sure,
was
for their 15 minutes?
Yes, Chris Collin
Gotta go
gave them a
fast.
list of 4 things to address. I don't have it in front of me. Do you remember what they were, Tom?
I don't remember. The gist of it was, your qualifications, your vision, your thought for the entire area, not just any limited portion of it. And I think 2 or 3 other questions. We'll have them at the beginning. We'll tee up the questions before we go with each presentation. So you'll know what their presentation is supposed to be addressing. I just don't have it off the top of my head.
Yeah, okay.
And
Yeah,
they were all
I
asked the same 4 questions. So they were all teed up the same way. We asked them to bring the information in the same format. They were all given the same remit. So
yeah, kind of like
compare and contrast what they tell us.
They can, and they
So
can.
I have the 4.
Oh, good.
I have the 4 points that we asked them.
Okay.
So we want to know about their project team. Why are they qualified by experience and training to do this? We're asking them to talk about their experience. Tell us about your other projects that are somewhat similar to this, and how did they go? What does the final product look like? What is your general vision for this redevelopment area? And how would you like to see the implementation proceed in broad terms, in terms of timelines and
timelines? Yeah, that's right.
That sort of
Yeah.
stuff. So broad.
One qualifying point I want to say, we asked them to give examples of similar developments, but we also told them they must limit it to only 3. So they pick the 3 most relevant ones and not just give us a laundry list of things they've done,
Right.
Well, I mean, yeah, 15 minutes, they're not gonna be able to get into much, so.
And I think the other important part of this for me to stress is, aside from logistical conversations about meetings and what to talk about when you come to the meeting, the idea is for us to be very transparent with the public on this. There have been no council meetings with any of these developers. As far as applicants, this is the first time you're meeting them in that capacity where they're talking to us about it. So the idea is, remind the public that we want to redevelop certain areas of the downtown. We're seeking qualified developers, so tell us why you're qualified, and let the public share in that process to the extent that it's prudent to do so.
Yeah, okay, perfect. Yeah, I think somebody had an earlier point about communication about stuff. I don't know if this is gonna go in one of your updates, but I don't recall seeing it kind of anywhere.
It was in my last update.
Was in your last update? I didn't read it, obviously. Sorry. I'll go
And
back.
actually, it was in the Bernardsville News this week.
And it was too. Okay, perfect. Good. Okay, so hopefully we'll get some good
Yeah, a good turnout from the public.
turnout. Yeah.
That was great. Okay.
Perfect.
Just so you know, I
Thanks.
won't be there.
Okay.
Because Joe DeMarco's handling it, and I will be sitting at the same desk attending a Long Hill Township Committee meeting. But if perchance you have any questions, feel free to text me and I will respond, but I can't imagine what you'd need from me.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Chad, you ready?
Yep.
Sure, I'll move to adjourn to not to executive session. Freudian slip of tongue. I will move to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
All right.
Aye.
All right.
Thank
you
you.
all.